Now, there's been so much focus on Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton for the last year, but actually Leclerc and Verstappen are quite old adversaries as well from their karting days, going through the ranks, and then in Formula One as well, when they've both had decent machinery before Ferrari slipped back to the midfield. And they're now back on the front row of the grid, and Leclerc on pole just beat Max Verstappen's Red Bull in qualifying, and it was crucial because as we get underway here, we can see Leclerc gets a decent enough start. Verstappen looks like he's for a moment got the jump, but Leclerc immediately comes across and covers the inside, and that basically sets out his stall for what he wants to do. Hold the inside. He knows that Verstappen can be aggressive, so he goes for it. Further back here is a bit of a moment for Sergio Perez, who's actually the guy that lost out the most of these front guys, and he gets a decent start. He comes alongside Carlos Sainz. Lewis Hamilton gets a flyer in the Mercedes, and there's basically a double squeeze on Perez. So there, Sainz comes across and squeezes him in this midfield trio, front end trio really. And as the top two fan out, Perez then still has a decent line through the first corner. Verstappen attacks Leclerc. Sainz has a good outside line to break into turn one as well. And now Perez is trying to get it back alongside Lewis Hamilton. The top three fan out into first, second and third. Perez side by side with Hamilton here behind, and Lewis basically runs Checo a little bit wide out onto the curb, and that allows Kevin Magnussen through into that fifth place. And a great start for Haas. But we can see immediately, if we focus back to the top two, what Charles Leclerc is trying to do. So lights go out, and Leclerc doesn't turn initially. So at the start, it's crucial to try and keep yourself pointing in a straight line to get maximum traction basically, and not induce some wheel spin at the rear. As soon as that settled down, there he goes, glance in the mirror to the right hand side. What's Max doing? It's okay, he's going to move across, and so he does. Not too aggressively, wants to keep his forward momentum, and he does it nicely here. Covers the white line, literally the front right tyre there, right onto the pit lane entry. No chance that Verstappen is going to jump him down the inside. So Max is shepherded to the outside, and then it's just a matter of holding him off in this position on the brakes. But remember, braking at the first corner is a little bit trickier now as well. The tyre blankets are set to a lower temperature than last year, so tyre warm-up is always going to be a little bit harder. The low-speed performance of the cars is a bit trickier. They're a bit more abrasive, a bit more bumpy, easier to lock up. So this is really well managed for Leclerc. For Verstappen, it's a shot at taking the lead. He wasn't under big pressure from behind. For Leclerc, big, tense pressure moment. And he just basically manages to hold Verstappen then on the outside. It would have been a good move for Max to come through, to be honest. But for Charles, gets to the apex. You can see he's fighting the grip, bit of an oversteer, and then he's just going to wash wide and make sure that Max cannot come through on the outside. And that gives him then the lead of the race in a Ferrari that looked really, really strong throughout the whole Bahrain weekend. So they're quite evenly matched, the Ferrari, Leclerc and the Red Bull of Verstappen. Sainz didn't really have the pace of his teammate all weekend, almost snuck pole position actually, but when it got back to race day, Sainz dropped back. Perez recovered past Magnussen, past Hamilton, but couldn't really make any inroads on Sainz either. So we've got a two-horse race out the front, and this is when it gets spicy then. The pit stop phase really bunched the two up. Verstappen pitted earlier, had a chance of an undercut on some soft tyres, and Leclerc emerged from the pits right in front of him. And one lap later, Max now up to full speed. Within a second, he gets the DRS. And this is now the start of one of the most thrilling lead battles that I can remember. So then, as we watch coming towards this first corner, now this is the first moment that Leclerc's got to defend from Verstappen. And you can see already he's looking in the mirror there, looking at that mirror over there, and Verstappen is just creeping to his inside already. He's got a huge closing speed at this time as Max. And again, look at Charles. Look at that. He's literally looking in the mirror there when Verstappen is now coming the other side of him. So he's a bit oblivious as to where Max is in the Red Bull. He's trying to defend, but he's thinking, where is he? And before he knows it, it's a little bit too late. Now he looks to the right and, the Red Bull's now coming through on the inside. So what can he do? Verstappen goes right the way to the inside. It looks assertive. It looks like this is the move for the lead of the race. And it looks a done deal, to be honest, at this point. But it's not. And this was the clever part from Leclerc. He tucks back in. And now, because Verstappen has moved so far to the inside, he couldn't get all the way back to the racing line. Leclerc could. And now at this point, we've got another DRS zone coming up just after the corner. And Verstappen has so much the tighter line through turn 2 here, whereas Leclerc can open it up and carry the speed, and he's going to get some DRS as well. And there you go. Verstappen tries to come back through to turn 2, but it's too little, too late. And now he's going to be under big pressure. Leclerc opens the DRS, and they're relatively side by side. And here, Charles just jinxed to the inside a little bit, tries to cut Max off in that braking zone, and it works. Verstappen doesn't put up a huge fight, and Leclerc goes through, and he just about keeps it within track limits on the exit as well. So it's a really nice retake, basically, from Leclerc. But this one, I think, it's the first of 3 overtakes that Verstappen does. And I think for this one, Leclerc was a bit caught out at how big the closing speed was of the Red Bull behind. If we go on board, this is such a great view. An analysis first, looking at the visor cam then of Charles. And you can see, looks in the left mirror, looks in the left mirror, looks in the left mirror. Oh, there's the Red Bull coming through on the right-hand side. So he's a little bit caught out by that, trying to defend the position at this point. But he's not basically covered the inside enough like he did at the start, and Verstappen is through there. But he's back on the racing line now. So this is a chance for Charles to come back, and you can see the difference here. He opens it up, carries the speed, and can pick up the DRS here, and through he comes back on the outside, and the lead of the race. Such fine margins here, but Leclerc manages to retain that lead at this time of asking. But I was also surprised at how Verstappen was racing, because we're all used to Max Verstappen being absolutely ruthless, taking no prisoners in combat, and we saw it right at the end of last year with Lewis Hamilton. We've seen it before with any driver really, whether it's race leader or not. He is ruthless, and if there's a chance to go for it, he will. And that is exactly what he does at this point. So he picks up the DRS, gets the big slipstream. Leclerc looks like he's trying to cover the inside, but really, he's not covering anywhere. Maybe he's a bit caught out by seeing where the Red Bull was. He's hovering in the middle of the road. So Verstappen goes down the inside. It's a nice looking move. And he makes the apex. So he's not gone in too hot. It all looks okay. But we know he's going to struggle. And this is a crucial bit here for Max. Comes through turn 2. And because he's on that tighter line, he needs to keep the speed up. And he just has to have a little correction at the wheel. And he cannot commit to full throttle, which then slows him on this run. He just cannot pick up full throttle early enough. So now he covers the inside on this part. It's the sensible thing to do. And Charles comes back on the outside. But as we get to the braking point, this is a new Max Verstappen. There's not just sending this car back on the inside at turn 4 for the lead of the race. Think back to last year. Think back to how he was racing with Lewis, particularly in the likes of Brazil, when he just sent it. If there was ever a half chance, if there was any level of minor overlap, even from a bit of a lunge, he would be sending this in on the inside of turn 4. If they both didn't make the corner, they both didn't make the corner. He'll let the stewards decide about it. But here, Max is actually just a little bit generous and thinks better of it. Doesn't go for the lunge on the inside of turn 4 when he had a chance to. It would have been a bit of an ambitious one, would have maybe risked the crash, certainly risked them both going a little bit wide. But here, he was a bit more cautious. Now, maybe that's because there's been a new directive from the race officials saying you've now got to be leaving space on the outside in these wheel-to-wheel races. They've tightened up that Brazil grey area, really, that was a bit controversial last year. It's also the first race of the season against a new competitor. So maybe if this was Lewis Hamilton at the end of last year, or maybe it's Charles Leclerc at the end of this year, Max would have sent that down the inside and fought that little bit harder and risked a little bit more, either the collision or the stewards. But at this point, he backs out, and it means that we get another chance to see the fight, and they both live on for another day. So interesting point there that I think Verstappen of old would have still gone for that and got his elbows out a little bit more. But here, he doesn't, and he waits for the next chance. And the cars have changed so much for this year, and I think it really did give Max a chance to have a next chance. And if we compare it to what we saw last year when Max tried to attack Lewis at turn 4 and ran wide, passed him off the track, had to give the place back, and actually never had the chance to re-attack Lewis even at the end of the race, and got very close through turn 13, had a big oversteer in the dirty air, lost the DRS, and that was actually the race won for Lewis Hamilton at that point. This time, Max can tuck back in behind Charles, and the very next lap, he's still right within DRS range, and we go again. But there's a difference here. Leclerc looking in the mirrors already, and covers the middle, then goes back to the racing line, and this time I think he's just allowing Verstappen to come through because he's learnt now, absolutely, if he didn't know before, that he can get that run through turn 4. So Verstappen comes through once again. Leclerc's given him, it's the kindest move that Leclerc will ever give up probably for the lead of a race, and Max takes it. He's given up that lead knowing that the turn 4 DRS opportunity, the retaliation DRS, is about to come. Max makes the corner nicely. This time he even opens up turn 2 a little bit more, but Charles is hugging that white line, knowing it's all about this next run, and he comes back through. This time it's on the inside, and they're side by side, and from this position it's going to be a little bit more simple for Leclerc to come through because he has the inside, Max on the outside. It's super close, it's fantastic racing, but there's not much that Max can do in the end to save it. If we watch it on board with Charles, you can see this time Max is a little bit further back. He doesn't have such a huge momentum to just pass Charles on the straight. So he does it on the braking zone, but Leclerc's a little bit easy on the brakes. He doesn't want to lock up. He knows that the fight for him is not actually at turn 1. He's happy to give up the position here to try and take it back at turn 4. It's a really interesting tactical decision that Leclerc's playing really here. High risk, just giving up the lead of the race. And he does so willingly. Look, he's so under control here, makes the corner, and then he's still right to the white line here, not running even slightly further out of that part of track, which you might even do on a fast lap. So Leclerc's really hugging the white line, opens up turn 2, then he can pop open the DRS and come through. Now, I said before that there wasn't much that Max could do to hold Leclerc back when he got to turn 4. I think this was a moment where maybe Max could have done a little bit more to hold him back, because Leclerc's now coming, he has the momentum, he's about to pick up the DRS, and he's kind of gifted the inside of the track. Verstappen's coming across here, but too little too late, and Leclerc is already now coming up the inside, and as we play it through into turn 4, he has that inside line. We know they go side by side through this corner, but I can't help but feel if Verstappen was on the inside, then he probably could have kept that position. So it was a brave decision really from Leclerc not to cover that inside into turn 1, to give up the place, and he just about managed to get it back at turn 4. But these are really, really fine margins. Maybe if Verstappen had sent in that lunge on the first attempt, he might have made it stick, but it would have been a little bit controversial possibly. Again, you can see here just how easy this one is for Verstappen. A move for the lead coming from this far back with absolutely no defence. It's nice. It should be a little bit locked up, should be a bit out of control coming from here for a move for the lead of the race, but it's super easy for Verstappen. He can even move slightly in the braking zone to try and open up the corner. That shows just how gentle Leclerc has been, how he's basically allowed Verstappen to take the lead here. Max comes through, no lockup, right on that apex. All looks pretty hunky-dory for him. Even this time, Max doesn't wash too wide himself, so he's given himself a chance here. Comes through, there's no big oversteer at turn 2, runs the curb, it all looks nice, but at this point, he just doesn't turn that wheel to cover the inside. So as we run it through, there's the Ferrari, and again, we're into a similar position really. If Verstappen had the inside here, could he have fired down a bit more of a lunge into turn 4? They could have gone side by side, but the man on the inside is always going to have a big advantage. But because he let Leclerc have that inside line, then Max has got a lot of work to do to try and hold the place. So really fine margins. I think Leclerc is playing with fire, allowing Verstappen to just have that lead at turn 1. It's a risky one, but it's one that he got away with both of these occasions really. The first one I think might have been unintentional. The second one certainly was intentional to give Verstappen the lead, and he fought back. And then it's always going to be tricky for Max to follow through that corner, even with better dirty air basically. So he drops back again. But he comes for one more attempt. Lap 19, 3 in a row now. Leclerc is soaking up so much pressure for the lead of the race in a Ferrari, a position he's not been in for a long time. And now this one takes the mickey really. Because look, once again, this time Verstappen's even further back coming into the corner. Now, this should never be a move for the lead of the race. Leclerc in the Ferrari, plumb on the racing line. Verstappen, I think he's maybe even just slightly caught out at how early and controlled Leclerc is. No sign of a defence. He's right out on the curb, minding his own business, Leclerc. You can see his left rear there, right out, just opening the corner as much as possible, saying, there you go, come through, the inside's all yours. So Max takes it. But then, crucially, he starts to turn in at this point. He's coming from a little bit further back. He's not massively out of control on the entry, but as Leclerc starts to turn in, Verstappen also starts to turn in, and this is where the race looks like it gets away from him a little bit, because as he turns in, that front right then becomes unloaded, the weight shifts to the outside, and he has a big lock-up here, and now he's struggling to stop the car properly. You need to do your braking in a straight line, and because it was slightly further back, Leclerc was slightly starting to turn in. He didn't want to plough into the side of the Ferrari. I think Charles would have given him a load of space because he knew exactly what he was doing. But this time, Max does just overcook it, still makes the apex nicely, but he's not stopped the car well enough. And now he runs right to the outside of the track. And this time Leclerc comes through, and that's the race over at this point. And it's just a fascinating battle, really, that it managed to stay on for 3 laps. They swapped places 6 times in total. Absolutely terrific fighting. And in the end, could Max have maybe stayed behind at turn 1 and tried to get the run back for turn 4? Would have been tricky there because Charles was giving himself the best possible exit every time. And it was just a really interesting way of racing in Formula 1 now, with a double DRS, but DRS switching so that the car behind, even on the second attempt, manages to basically get it and have a chance to repass, unlike a double DRS where there's only one detection point. So Leclerc's basically using that. He's being very clever. He's risking it a lot because a couple of those times I think Verstappen maybe could have just clung on slightly more, and I think if the championship was in the balance and this was race 18, then he might have done, but he played the odds and he made it work. Well, that was a look into the latest duel in the desert in Bahrain between Charles Leclerc and Max Verstappen. Quite reminiscent, really, of the Hamilton-Rosberg moment, the epic, back in 2014. But this Grand Prix had plenty more action as well. There were midfield heroics and some near misses further back. And if you want to see them, check them out on F1 TV.